So Darius, we thank you a lot for accepting our invitation to talk to the film of that crew.
Well, that's an auspicious portrait.
We are Lucas, Vasco, Susana, and Pedro, and today we are at the Cinemateca Portuguesa to have a conversation with you about cinema and concepts and the importance of movie making to you and how philosophy has to do with that all. And I would like to make maybe a first question or maybe a comment on Sound of Metal. Because when I was seeing Sound of Metal for the first time, the first thing that came to mind was the operations that were happening in the 70s with Ferraço and Nassif. So another approach to mental health, and it's another approach to mental health that comes with the physicality of thinking. So instead of thinking, for instance, psychoanalysis and therapy with words and logocentrism, they were proposing an exploration of the space, another way of like semiotically using your body. And then I saw your film and I said, oh, I mean, there's a lot here. So my comment would be, how this idea of the physicality came to you, and especially when you have a character that is a drummer, so he's making music and he's listening to it, but then there is a moment that he figures out that music is much more than what you listen to, and it's the contractions and vibrations of it, especially in that scene with this light. And then
with the slide.
With this light, yes. Because there's an understanding there that music is vibration. And I mean, that really touched me, and I think it dialogues a lot with our investigations here. If you can comment and talk a little.
Well, there's a lot to say on that. The physical cinema is really important to me personally, and the building of physicality of cinema. This film really explores it very specifically. What you're talking about is there's an organization of the film that exists purely physically, and physically means it's affecting your body as you watch it, and your psyche as you watch it through the prism of your actual senses versus your frontal lobe. Because if I want to hit the body in a way that's somatic in the film, not just kind of triggering ideas, but actually triggering memory and triggering trauma and triggering your senses and your psyche. So the film is really organized completely physically. It's called Sound of Metal. And sound, as you're talking about, is the first act is sound, the middle act is of, and the third act is metal. So the first act is sound, and the definition of sound is that invisible force that travels through the air that connects one thing to another. So that first scene with the music is awakening your senses as these two people are both connecting to each other, because there's two people making this very loud music, but it's also awakening the audience. It's just meant to awaken the audience physically. It's meant to hurt a little bit. But there are frequencies in there that eventually slide, that as you work toward that slide, you're in the act of. And the act of is the definition of that is to belong to be a part of. So it's the being in a group. It's that connective force that is of the heart, And when that slide is, it's actually similar frequencies in that as you heard in the first music. So it's reminding you of that thing that connects, that invisible force of sound that connects the vibration. And then metal is the last act. And metal is, again, by the time you get to that sound in the end, that's again very physical. It's again taking frequencies both from the slide and from the beginning especially. And you're returning to that thing that you thought you might have wanted the whole way in a different form. So all of it's meant to be hitting your body and your heart on a very physical level.
And it's beautiful the way that you put sound of metal. I mean, this is a beautiful way of explaining a title in a way that the explanation opens it a lot. So we don't conclude the film with the title, you actually open the film with the title. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a dialectics of the process that you put, that you express through the narrative.
Yeah.
And regarding that transition from sound to silence and then again to sound, but a metallic sound, what I was thinking after seeing your film is that the way you work with silence, because silence of course is a very abstract concept regarding moving pictures. But what it feels like is that silence is not the absence, but it's a presence. It's that vibration and so on that is really present, although it seems like an absence. And my question is precisely how do you work that invisible presence? You know, how does it trigger the narrative? Because silence could be the end of something. It could be distraction because he's a drum player.
Yeah.
But it begins something else. You know, it's the beginning of a different process and a different connection with communications. Because as Lucas was saying, the drum player is communicating with the body while playing drums, and then with the sign language, there is a flow of communication. It's not a rupture. No, I don't know if this is something that you were really was in your mind, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, our whole relationship to silence is really interesting, as you say, because it's the enemy for us in so many ways. But we were talking about earlier, just in terms of our attention, our sense of presence. Silence is a scary place because it's, even putting aside deafness, most of us don't experience real silence ever, right? But silence is what we think of. We think of it as the absence of, right, what you're saying.
Matter.
Yeah, the absence of, communication, the absence of input. And in fact, that silent place is at the heart of all religious philosophy. All spiritual philosophy is based in the presence of that space being the avenue to God.
Mm-hmm.
So even through the prism of religion, that silent place is very important. But the question is, in film, without like romanticizing silent film or anything, silent film wasn't silent, it generally had music. So the idea is, how do you have silence in a film? How do you earn silence in a film so that silence is actually communicating that sense of connection to that other force? How does that work? So that was the core focus, like in the film, which is, I always think about it as like the white in a watercolor. Okay? The white in a watercolor is the page. It's the paper. You never paint the white, right? Yeah. And it's only the surroundings that create the relative whiteness. So if you want the brightest light, you have to earn it. It's like a pre-existing condition that you only earn with other colors. So that's how this film was always I always thought about earning that silence. How do we build toward those moments of silence in which actual silence, I had this huge argument with my sound designer about this, where he was like, you can't have actual silence, people will think the film's broken. In other words, you have to have fake silence. You have to have a sound that is the sound of silence. Mm-hmm. By the way, Sound of Silence is the movie people always tell me, like, shouldn't it be called Sound of Silence?
Yep.
No,
I think actually in Zurich was translated as Sound of Silence to the Portuguese translation. Yeah.
I know, I get it, but Simon and Garfunkel, they did that.
Yeah.
So this fight to have actual silence,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very rare in a movie that the sound is cut out entirely. And why? Like, why is that important? Because the experience of watching an image on a screen when it's actual silence does something to our bodies that nothing else does. If it's earned like that white on the watercolor page, which it draws us into our bodies, because suddenly our own presence becomes apparent to us, because we're not over there, we're suddenly right here. So like, it's amazing, you see tonight when we show the film, that when that moment comes, the rustling in the theater, the movements, the breathing, everything is present suddenly. So when that experience happens, that hopefully is earned on the screen, where he becomes in touch with something that hopefully is transcendent on some level, I really am interested in the experience the audience has of sitting in that same silence. Where are you in that? Does it make you uncomfortable? Do you want to crawl out of your skin? Are you able to breathe? Where's your body? You know, that's the physical cinema again. So yeah, that's so there's only 2 moments when it's actually silent in the film. In the end, but there's another moment also, which is right when he gets the implants. There's a moment when you go to the silence right before he initiates the implants, and there's a preview of that silence where it's like, there's nothing there. But what's interesting about that again is reflective energy in the movie. The movie is always repeating sounds, and so you can gauge where the psyche is related to that. So in that moment, when it's silence, his psyche is in complete unrest. Right? So you actually, as an audience, you go into silence for a moment in a state of like, you know, unrest in general, so that can contrast to the end. Did I answer that? I mean, you know, the whole concept of silence in the film, it plays out in multiple ways, because there's the literal silence, and then there's the experience within the deaf community, which isn't silence. There's nothing about deaf existence that is silent. As a matter of fact, it's quite loud. You know, and deaf people hear vibration on a whole spectrum. You know, that's actually even the way deaf people talk, is so that their throats vibrate, so that they can know and feel their own speech. You know, and the hitting of the table and everything. Deaf culture is very, very physical, and it's not quiet. But the experience is quieter than we're used to as hearing people. So we are thrust into that experience as hearing people watching this film. It feels relatively quiet. You know.
And it's, I mean, there's this epistemological exercise that we propose to the audience to like, can we experience cinema in another way that is not only with seeing the images? So, I mean, this epistemological thing, it was also something very important to see and to think after seeing Sound of Metal. Came to me, especially because you cast it like an actor, and there is this moment that one of the characters, Joe, tells Ruben, "You're all eyes."
Yeah.
And you precisely, you chose an actor that has those like big eyes and looks, but then it's not about the eyes anymore. It's about this whole complexity of the body that you're proposing for us to exercise while watching the film. And then I find it very tricky in a way, because you're proposing an actor with those big eyes for us to maybe close the eyes a little bit and experience it another way. So
well, it's interesting with his eyes. His sign, his deaf name is this.
Okay.
That's when in deaf culture you're given a name at some point. It happens just randomly. Someone will go, and so that's his name.
Yeah.
You have these big eyes. You're an owl, like an owl. But the film, one of the things that's really important to me about the film is that it's a perspective film. It's a film with normally we would say POV, speaking to what you're talking about, would be point of view. So you're thinking, if you have these big eyes, shouldn't we be seeing through those eyes? And as a matter of fact, you're not. This is what I would call in this film a POH. It's a point of hearing. So rather than the point of view where you're in that place, which is something we're well versed in cinema. This is a point of hearing that we're actually jockeying into his his perspective of hearing, which doesn't mean you're seeing through his eyes. The camera can be back here, but we're hearing through his ears. And that is probably one of the most unusual things about the movie, is that very specific first person, because you're never in anyone else's. He's never not in the scene. There's never a moment when it's not his movie. And you're thrust into that place, into his perspective, through the ears. And that happens from the first frame. You just don't know. You're in it in the first frame. Those are his ears, And then there's a moment when you're not, and you start to create that contract with the audience, where you start to go, oh, I see what's happening. How do I feel about that? How does that feel to be in those ears? It's sometimes a little hard, but that's the point. It's so dogmatic in the movie that even when he doesn't know sign language, we as the audience don't read subtitles.
Okay.
Because we can't know it if he doesn't.
Yep.
In other words, you're never smarter than him as an audience.
Amazing.
Which is again something that's really important to me about, I think films sometimes look down on their characters. There's a certain, as the film is very wise, the character, we can have our judgments about that character over there. We can laugh at that character. I hate that. I don't want that. I don't want to be smarter than the character, or why. I want to be right in that experience. So playing with those things, like the subtitles of sign language, come once he knows sign language. But not sooner.
Amazing. I mean, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's really, it was a wonderful realization. How far can you push this business of perspective? And what does that do to us as an audience? So some people get very frustrated. Hearing people get very frustrated in those scenes. What the fuck? Why can't I? And why now? And you go, yeah. What does it feel like to be a minority in this group?
Yep.
Welcome.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yep.
Yeah. The same with the party in Belgium. At the end of the film, when he's in the party and he's just going around and you hear all that sound and everything. Yeah, that's that experience when you get to have that.
Yep.
Right there.
Exactly.
No, it's so interesting that you precisely use the term of to feel, as Ruben is feeling, because it reminds me, Gilles Deleuze was a French philosopher, and he tried to conceptualize about cinema in what you can say it's more intellectual way. But what is interesting is that Deleuze is saying that film was a way of thinking, but also a way of feeling with the film. And that's precisely this bringing together these thoughts of films with the feeling that the film itself seems to be living.
Right.
It's a strange perception of film. And I think that in the case of Sound of Metal, it makes a lot of sense. It's like you are reading Deleuze in a way, kind of putting this in concrete material, the physicality of the film, as we were saying, but also this connection with the audience.
That's right, yeah. I mean, Roger Ebert called film empathy machines, And that's, for me, the highest bar of a movie.
Not just an intellectual thing that we think about, but also that connection with empathy, with feeling. That's precisely very important. Also, in the philosophical way of dealing with films. That's what I would say.
That's right.
And there's this moment, for instance, when we think with Deleuze and how can we conceptualize this film philosophical way of thinking, of feeling, and then we're going to work with montage. So there is Godard, there's the way that Godard is going to tell us a narrative. Yeah, there's more formalistic. But then you use a formalistic thing that is using the subtitles, but you're tricking the way of experiencing the film by using the subtitles only when the character is able to. So it's not really montage, but it's another graphic thing that appears on the screen. So it's very Godardian in a way, but it's not only like one scene after the other, and we have a lot of this in your film. So there's like those jump cuts, and you have to understand the time passed because of the hair growth, for instance, and this is very important. But also this new experience of filmmaking, of like understanding the world, because you put a subtitle when the character understands sign language.
Isn't that interesting?
Amazing.
I mean,
yeah.
it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's so simple and like so fascinating at the same time. Because you know, even if you miss it, you still get it.
Yep.
Even if it didn't register, you still get it.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, and the jump cut you mentioned.
Mhm.
So like this idea, I think I don't remember who said it, but someone talked about film within the realm of transcendental cinema. This notion of leaning in or leaning back. You know, and I think I'm much more interested in the leaning in thing. You know, where cinema makes you kind of makes you lean in. You're not working harder. You want to lean in, and when you want to lean in, it actually isn't as hard. But the sitting back thing is a little like if Morgan, you know, Freeman is talking about penguins. You know what I mean? It's like you know someone else has got it. You're good. You can just chill.
Yeah.
But I love the leaning in. So like a time jump like that, like you were saying, a jump cut. You know, this was an argument with people, you know, when I was cutting the film. And you know, but why not like, you know, 6 months later or, you know, this and stuff, because 6 months later is Morgan Freeman again.
Yeah.
Talking about the penguins. So you get to like lean back. But what happens in a movie, you know, when you get a cut and you have to kind of go, because that jump cut that happens, suddenly the character's walking in a field with deaf children. What happens the first time you see subtitles? So something's changed, whether you're talking it or not. You're now understanding sign language, which is this indicator that he understands, and his energy has changed, and various things has changed. But not so much that you don't have to kind of go, did time pass? And that thing where you go, did time pass? That's leaning in. And that's what keeps, in my mind, that sort of engagement and narrative is, for me, the highest bar. And it's very interesting what creates that. Because bells and whistles and razzle-dazzle, you know, anyone can put score on an image and make it feel something, but it does not make you lean in. As a matter of fact, it does the opposite. You can just go, I'm good. You know, it's every James Bond film or everything like that. They're supposed to be like that. They're supposed to just go in there and eat popcorn and lean back. But those films that make you engage your body, that's a really high level of discipline. You know, that's for me the highest bar. And that's part of transcendental cinema, is really that sense of how catharsis occurs through that process of leaning in, through that process of what you see and what you don't see, what's omitted, you know.
Are you thinking of a Schrader concept of transcendental cinema or not?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think it was Paul Schrader who spoke about leaning in. I think that's from him. But I think it's a wonderful lineage of cinema. And it has a lot, it's very important to me. But it can be worked on with any single genre. I just think we're moving further and further away from it in film in general. Because I think films are starting to, I won't go down this road because no one wants to hear this, but I think films are starting to emulate like TikTok. You know, the whole notion of TikTok, if you looked at everyone knows why it's so unhealthy, because you're getting this endorphin rush in your brain, whatever the hell that dumbass video is, and then you're going like this and you're getting another one. If that's not enough, you go to the next and you're getting another and another. That's what films are doing. They're emulating it.
Please go down with it.
Well, I mean, it's something that really, it's a losing battle right now, because brains are changing. I was saying, like, my other aunt is was the president of neuroscience, and she talks about clocking it over her whole tenure as a professor, but it's really real. Brains are changing. They're changing to these hungry addicts, these brains that need this. Yes, And what's interesting about bulimia is like, or some kind of atrophy of nutrition, is that we want nutrition. It's not a chore to feed. We want it, but we don't know we want it. So it's like everyone knows this when you open that computer and you think, do I want to, or you want to watch something, and you go, I don't want to watch that would actually feed you, but because you might think it's boring, or I might have to work hard, or this or that or the other thing. But once you start watching, you go, how could I possibly have watched a reality show instead of this? Our brains think we just want the endorphin rush, increasingly. So I do think it's a losing battle. I think right now you have the basic population moving in one place, and I think film is following. Film is going, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. I can show you one thing after another, after another, after another, and you will always be satiated. But will you leave full? Will your body remember that movie? This is a really incredible experiment that I really believe in, which is that I think that language of the leaning back, kind of the film's doing all the work for you, making sure you're never bored, all those kind of things. I think that we actually don't remember those films. I think we have an experience in the moment that's really engaging our endorphins. I don't think we remember them as experiences.
Like you don't remember
TikTok videos.
when you go to McDonald's or you have fast food. There's not an experience to remember. It's just an habit.
It's another thing. I think that's how I think actually some films create experiences in our minds, in our emotions, and in our bodies that we remember. If you think about those some moments of films that you remember, they probably were that experiential thing where you let your body register something and didn't let go. And that's not everything I care about. Carlos Regales, who's a wonderful Mexican filmmaker, I spent the sound mix and sound metal for 26 weeks with just the mix. And I spent it all at his place in Mexico. And we have incredible talks about films. So I won't take this for myself, but I will give it to Carlos, because he said it. It's the most important thing in film is presence. And that's all he cares about is presence. And I love that, because I think that's what he's talking about this. He's talking about that state of being present versus being, massaged. I'm saying massaged instead of jerked off. That's inappropriate.
It's actually more bluntly if you say jerked off.
Well, the funny thing is that it's not very hard to manipulate an audience.
Yep.
And I think this is going to show up more and more with AI, because we're going to be seeing so much more AI-driven crap that it's not hard to do it. You won't see AI doing presence very quickly, but because it's not easy and it's not intuitive even. But
AI doesn't have a body.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Where is the body of the that's the question.
You can't relate to that or empathy.
Robots have a body, but AI doesn't.
Well, for now, let's not go there. Let's not go there. But yeah, I think that's a certainly Sound of Metal was working in that vernacular. And we talked about this being a series called Film and Death, and what's interesting is Sound of Metal is organized into the 5 stages of grief. So it's literally in those 5 stages, from anger to denial to bargaining to depression to acceptance. And you can see it really clearly once you hold those. And so even though it's not a film about death, it is a film about death. It's a film about loss and what we do when we lose something. And you said something interesting before we started talking about, maybe, do you remember about, one of you said it, about death. It's something about our fundamental relationship to loss. And you say it again. It's really what I like to do in interviews, is put you on the spot.
We switched.
But I mean, especially if we go with like Lacanian psychoanalysis, it's the same signifier. You listen to death and to death in the same way. I mean, it's the same word as you listen to it. And in a certain way, it's one of those five senses of the body that you lose, and you lose somehow culture. Because our culture is very egocentric, it's very like you have to listen to stuff to understand stuff, and maybe even more than the eyes and losing sight, losing the ability to hear, and to understand people.
Yeah.
It's in the way that understanding is done. Here, it's very strange. It's maybe this works very well with the death drive. It's something that has to change your ability to deal with our culture, with a way that our Western civilization built itself.
That's right. No, actually, the film is dedicated to my grandmother, Dorothy Marder, who is Alyssa's my aunt, who you know, Dorothy is an incredible cinephile, intellectual, really robust intellectual, and that was her modality, was obviously verbal communication, but it was really important for her because she was someone who wanted to communicate ideas, and she was a very strong personality, and she went deaf early after taking an antibiotic. Okay. And it saved her life, but rendered her profoundly deaf. And that experience of being cut off, just like you're talking about, it was untenable for her. Because, where are you anymore? Or do you have any value? How do you sit at a table? And we all know that social currency where, you're sitting in a group of people and you're thinking, once they hear from me, they'll know that they're existent. But until they do, they don't know. That's our whole mode of communication. It's like this currency that we exchange with our ideas. So what happens when it's lost and cut off? And watching my grandmother suffer through this the way that she did is really part of this film. This was a direct experience of this.
I think you're dedicated.
Yeah.
You're dedicated. There's her name.
Yeah, for that reason. But she was a cinephile, and so she lost film because nothing was captioned back then. So she wrote countless letters, incredible letters. She put herself to getting films captioned. Yeah. Because she just didn't want it. She lost a lot of social interactivity, but it was the films that really hurt her, to not be able to do it.
It's a film about the necessity of some kind of metamorphosis from this character. He has to morph into some other being existing in the world. He has to produce some other form of existence.
It's like he has to adjust to an amputation, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
To a loss.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's not. The interesting thing with the writing of Sound of Metal is you can very much imagine the movie. Like a lot of people come and say, "Well, what does he do after? What's next?" And certainly producers who didn't want to make the film with me didn't want to make it because they wanted to see him go back and have a romantic relationship with the teacher and the deaf community. Yeah. All the things that we put in the basket of learning how to exist. Isn't that interesting though? Like the film doesn't. I think I was really curious about not seeing the panacea, not understanding, not giving the audience the fix. Yeah. I like the word fix because it's relating to drugs. Yeah. And that whole idea of the fix was really present in the movie. It's always about the fix, the fix. And I think that's, important that we experience is exactly what you said, like the experience is adjustment.
Yeah. One of the things in your film that quite captivated me is the idea that we can't go back to where we were. Right. We can't recover the status.
That's right.
And in a sense, what your film does is kind of an hyperbole, because we are always in a position that we cannot recover the things that we lost, but most of the times we don't even notice.
That's right.
And in the case of your character, it becomes quite acute.
That's right. Yeah. I love it you said that, because there's a dogmatic linearity in the film.
Yeah.
It's just like it's marching forward and you never go back. You don't even go forward. And by that I mean, like, films have the ability to go forward with relapse and with dissolves. You know, so you can be in the next scene before you're there, which is a whole language which you never do in this film. Everything's a hard cut because it's completely rooted in that present moment. And once you shift, it's gone. And I even did that as a process for the actors.
Okay.
Which is that the film is shot chronologically, so that when you, like, so for instance, Olivia Cook is a wonderful actor against Riz. When they're saying goodbye, she had to leave after that. She's gone, you know, because a goodbye is a goodbye, and she can't come back until the end, you know. And it was the same with learning, you know, Riz learned sign language for so many months. And then he had his final scene with Paul Raci, the character Joe, and that was goodbye. That was not just goodbye to being in a deaf community, and it was goodbye to all the language he had learned, and it was goodbye to Paul, to Joe, you know, and then you leave. So things had that feeling when you're shooting of like, this thing's moving forward, which is unusual in film. Usually, you know, usually you're just jumping around.
And in a way, the resolution of the narrative is when he understands he can't go back. Yeah, it makes peace with the fact that he can't go back.
That's right, which is why it's so important you don't know where he's going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He can't go back to the relationship.
Exactly.
And he can't go back to, certainly that life or the deaf community necessarily. You know, he could, but it's not the point.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you change countries as well. I mean, why that happened? Why it was necessary to go from the US to Europe? Why it was part of the screenplay?
Well, let me ask you, what did it feel like when you did it?
When I was watching,
Unexpected.
it was unexpected. I never thought, oh, why is this film ended in Europe or in Belgium or France? Why are they talking in French now? I loved it because it displaced my.
It
displaced me.
It creates a further displacement.
Yes.
So it's kind of the strangeness of that new life is growing.
And also for us working with like film philosophy and etc. At the moment I said, okay, so we're dealing with French philosophy.
Well, it is very specific to a French kind of cultural experience that you wouldn't have in America, that I think was important. I think it was important that they were separated by an ocean, all of those things. But more importantly, again, something that I'm really interested in is, how do you feel the fullness of a character? You know, what's so interesting is you have these two people in this funny world that most people don't relate to. Right? We're just traveling from gig to gig, small shows, you know, experimental noise music. You know, this isn't the life that most people know. But you're looking at these two people and you're going, okay, there's a romanticism to it. They're doing it. She's a cutter. There's stuff going on. Where does he come from? You never go there for the most part. You know what I mean? You don't have these long soliloquy moments in the movie where you talk about your father, and you talk about this. You don't do this normally. You would, but you don't. But what happens when you travel overseas and you revisit this woman and she looks different? And in fact, this past, there was this big, almost, you know, Serge Gainsbourgian world behind her comes into the moment. It didn't precede the moment, right? She had that bleachy hair and all this shit and hairy armpits and like, she was doing her punk thing. But then suddenly, to your point, when he goes there to this other country with this other culture, that suddenly is the title thing that is her, that you didn't see. Isn't that all of us? I mean, and that's why it's interesting. Like, that thing that was present, her mother committed suicide, it's all there. You know, her father was a musician. Why is she with him? All of these things could fail. if you allow it in. But there's a wide gulf between these two worlds. That is not him. He was an army brat in America. So as you hit this moment, I think that's so much of what we are. You know, couples, if you look at a couple, they have that generations of energy behind them. On one side, generations of a different energy on the other side. Sometimes it's trauma. Most people have some trauma. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's very comfortable. Whatever it is, it shows up. And that's the idea: is how can that foundation of being show up in a way that really awakens our senses? It could have been Texas, but it would have been very different. You know, it's a very different story. And I think that gulf between them is really important.
And it's also very beautiful the way that the couple is not a couple anymore.
Yeah.
So he arrives there, and it's a feeling.
Yeah.
It's a
It's a feeling.
I mean,
yes.
you get it, and they don't need actually to have like a huge conversation. Oh, okay, so we're not together anymore. I mean, it is a feeling. It is a.
That's right.
That's also very beautiful. In a way, it goes to. There's a question like Freud asks in one of his texts. That is, okay, we do a lot with this communication between unconscious and consciousness. So actually, how do unconscious communicate? So, and I think it is this affection, this affective force that the film really assembles through music, but then music becomes vibration.
Well, that tiny move, I'm so glad you brought Freud up. Just like any interview without Freud would just be a sham.
But Freud without interpretation. It's a Freud more of
But the unconscious was really important, the way that came up. Because, you know, you have that seemingly very simple scene in the beginning where he tells her to stop scratching. Right? And stop scratching, time to get up, let's dance. Remember, at the beginning, and they dance. And you can check it out tonight. So, I love the simplicity of things. If you can, you know, like, okay, what does that mean? You might have noticed the scars on her arm. You might not have. If you're watching, you might have. But it's not. The camera never points. It's just a thing. You know, stop scratching. It seems simple enough. And then you go through their journey together. You recognize he's an addict. You thought it was about deafness, but it's actually about an addict, right? So you're suddenly in, what the fuck is that? You know, and then you're in that world, and then you eventually get back to Europe, of all places, to France, which is where it's meant to be. You know, and what happens? The subconscious. He's saying we got to get back to it. That's what he was saying. We got to get back. We got to get it back. We got to get our airstream. We got to go on tour. We got to get the tour back together. And she's going, yeah. But what is her hand doing? It's scratching. And when he sees that subconscious behavior, he recognizes that the scratching is related to him. And that her body tells the story, no word that she says. And that's why, that's the catalyst for the ending. It's that simple subconscious movement. Which is really the most important thing to bring up in that realm of the subconscious. You know, because it's kind of a cataclysmic, has a massive tectonic effect on our lives. That one subconscious behavior.
It's an acting out.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So tonight when we watch, and if we want to have that discussion with the audience afterwards, look for those stages of grief. Look for the anger is not hard to find. The denial is the first one. The anger. The bargaining is very literal. Bargaining. I mean, that's literally what he does. Is bargains. That's why he gets kicked out of the deaf community. Bargaining. Right? Then depression, you know, which I think you can see in the party. It's literal, just depression. It's not anger, it's not denial, it's not bargaining, it's just depression, right? And then acceptance. So,
There's a way more down to earth question. You were talking about your grandmother. I seem to recall that I read somewhere that the inspiration for your film was a docu-fiction by Derek's influence.
Yes.
Called Metalhead, that was never released yet.
Well, Derek he and I wrote Place Me on the Pines together,
Yeah.
so we have a whole history of working together, and like Derek's a really rarefied filmmaker. He's a dear friend, but he's a special filmmaker. He's really he's one of those guys who's just really engaging with life force and the camera, and how the camera really encourages life force. So he and I kind of had this crazy collision right at the time when I was making another documentary, which is the film I made before Sound of Metal. And we met at a picnic because our kids were at the same school. and he starts talking about this film Metalhead, and I was talking about my dog. And it was very clear in Metalhead that he was engaging in this highly narrative exploration of a real metal band whose name was Jucifer, and they are a couple on the road, just like Sound of Metal. But I was just like, wow, I just loved it. As soon as I heard it, I just went, oh my God, it sounds amazing. Started watching footage, and eventually the thing was dying. He was making Blue Valentine, and it was just like languishing, so I took the footage to edit it, not to make another movie, just to edit the footage. I just wanted to so I was cutting this, and Derek's is such an awesome filmmaker. Everything's shot beautifully. He's shooting on 16 millimeter and everything, and I suddenly got this point of hearing notion while I was cutting. He wasn't shooting it for that purpose, but I just suddenly got this cinematic revelation about this. And at a certain time, Derek said, do you want to take over that movie? Do you want to direct it? And I said, no, I'm not going to direct your movie. I would write my own, I'd write it anew. And Derek just said, okay. He's a generous spirit in the sense of I think Derek wants to see things made more than he wants to possess, which is a very wonderful spirit. So yeah, that's how that happened. And it was just born of one of those very rare creative connections you have with another person, where you have similar instincts, and we come from two very different worlds, but we share this certain core instincts.
There's just one question, because maybe
have fun editing this.
There's just one question, maybe it can be the last one.
Yeah.
Because a film about being deaf, or a film about being an addict.
Yeah.
How deaf and addiction cross each other? Yeah. How do you make up with it?
The thing about deafness and addiction is probably the bravest thing about the film. Really. Because it's very difficult to create a handoff in a movie. It's also the thing that for both me and my brother who I wrote it with, it's the thing that most excited us. Because to make a film about someone going deaf, well, I'm deaf, and that's hard. On all the things you would think about being difficult with that. But the fact that he's an addict, but you never see a drug, the real monster of the movie is not the deafness.
Yes.
And that's very much what the movie's about. It's it goes back to that Buddhist principle of suffering. The suffering in the movie isn't the effects of you being, the effects of you being deaf. That's not your suffering. Your suffering is your relationship to what you've lost. That's that very Buddhist principle. That your relationship, your awareness of what you've lost. So as an addict, that's the way you see that. That's the way it becomes a very, very human story. It's really how do we relate to loss. And an addict looks for a fix. That's what an addict looks for. So once you create that monster and that handoff, which is a very difficult handoff, by the way, narratively, it's a very difficult handoff. It's the guy goes deaf and you think you're on a path and then suddenly you're on a different path. The path of an addict that's so exciting to me. Again, it's that language of leaning in, going, what? I thought we were watching that movie, we were watching this movie?
Yeah.
I like that, I like that thing because what I think in general is true, it's related to what we were talking about with TikTok. We're all addicts. We are all addicts. We are all looking for a fix in life. Most people are in complete denial of death for their entire lives, and most, I think, of everything everyone does is in relationship to their relationship to death. Literally our activities on a daily basis are how we relate to death. Or what stage of our relating to death are we in? Are we in the denial stage? Are we getting our fix? Are we taking drugs? What are we doing? Are we having to make films every day? Are we addicted to relationship? Are we incapable of it? All of it relates to death and our kind of universal fear of death. And so once you introduce the addict, you're getting into that territory.
Yep.
Not so much just deafness. And I think the thing that I was so interested in is recognizing that collectively, because it's a perspective. What I was interested in is, do we as an audience want him to fix it?
Yep.
I know we do. I know we do. So I love that. I love that as soon as you hear, oh, there's an implant, we're all going, get it, right? Because that's what we do. We fix it. We satiate it. We shoot up.
Yep.
We do the swiping, That's what we do. And it's really begging the audience, where are you in this? Where are you in it? Right? So even when he leaves that community and you have that sad scene where you recognize he had community and then he's leaving, and you have that sad departure, you're still kind of excited that he's going to get his fix. Oh, you're actually going to do this. Huh. But then you get your, the fix is the suffering. That's the very Buddhist principle. But I was raised Buddhist, so it's very much in the DNA of me. That principle is what that's all about.
I think it's been so interesting the way that you're trying also to think about your own film within this framework of the film and death, and the way that film makes us think about that in general, not just the most obvious visual way of dealing with death, like with corpse or something more direct. And it's interesting because from hearing you talking about your own process, I can see a really coherent way of thinking about the ethics of directing a film. For example, the way that you shoot it on a chronological pace, and also connected with the openness of the film. I mean, the idea that a film should not be closed. I mean, the narrative does not need to be closed. It's precisely this sense of dealing with that, with the loss, with grief. And I think it's very coherent of you to see this connection, this truthness of filming a film that is not to pretend something, it's not a fake, but it's really connected with the way that we deal with time, time lapse, temporality, loss in reality.
That's right.
I mean, it's a very really experience.
That's right. You see it come up in that scene with Joe in the end, where Ruben, again, it's very subconscious language, where he goes, what does it matter? It's just passing, it's just passing, it's just passing, it's just passing time. It's just passing. That's subconscious language. What is that? Why does he say it's just passing? It's death. Why else do you say that? Right? It's just passing. What does it matter? I should just die. I should just die, or I'm afraid I am going to die. This is just passing.
It's very awareness of the emergency, the urgency of living the present moment.
That's right. That's all we have. And yet we really don't know that. We really don't know that. Isn't that amazing? Like I say it with love, because I don't know it from moment to moment. We say we know it. We do not know it. That's all we have. We have nothing else, nothing but that. Yet we're always thinking in terms of some other moment where we're gonna have something. What? Yeah. People always say to this, like right now I have an unusual process of making films. There are some filmmakers who do this, but I make films over very long periods of time. Like, it's just what interests me because I like how life feeds your writing and vice versa. And so like the film I'm about to make, I've been writing for 20 years. And you know, people always say to me, you must be so excited to get done. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, what if you said that about sex? You know? Like, no, I'm going to enjoy the moment. Thank you very much. Like, this whole experience of making something is the thing. When it's done, that's a different thing. That's actually loss.
Yeah, exactly.
That's loss. That's like,
it's abdicating.
it is. Yes, I mean, I'm up for it. I will have that loss when it's time, but I sure as fuck don't want it now.
Yep.
You know? I don't want to fast forward to the loss.
Yeah.
You know? But if you have a chance to make something, which we basically do in every moment of our lives, that's it. That's what life is. You know, it's like John Lennon's line, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? That's suffering.
And because we don't know, like a prehistory of Ruben, for instance, we don't really know about his mother a lot. I mean, there's only a little talk in France with the father, a little spot that, oh, my mom, I was born in Texas, a very tiny point. 30 seconds, I suppose.
That's right.
Because he doesn't have a prehistory.
That's right.
I mean, it impacts us much more because it becomes, in a way, it can relate to all of us. I mean, it isn't in this interpretative way of like, oh, this happened because of that. We lose this logic.
That's right.
So
I mean, what you do know is he doesn't have that family unit that he can go to.
Yeah.
He is on his own.
Yeah.
You know. But you're right. I'm so interested in that. And you can get a tiny little something, and that thing fills this whole world for us. You don't need much more. With Ruben, it was very disciplined. Actually, Alyssa, we saw the early cut. She felt like there wasn't quite enough. She said this to me. She said, I could have stood, and I actually put one more sentence in there. There used to be even less.
Okay.
It's related to something Alyssa said.
It's the family, yeah. So, but it's amazing because if we take the family off the picture, psychoanalysts get crazy. They're like, but where's the family? But there's no family.
It's all over the place.
But
You just have to look.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all over the place. I mean, the fact that
We
wrote literally hundreds of pages on backstory.
Okay.
It's all there.
Yeah.
It's just that you have to find the little clues into it.
Yeah.
There's no answer for us to feel like complete as oh he's doing that because of that.
It's again related to that thing where as an audience we want that fix. Oh, I get it. Oh, now I get it.
Yep.
Like, no, you don't quite get that. You just have to see that he's a human. He's one of us.
Yeah.
You know?
We need to be a nearby presence. Yeah. We have to be neighbors.
All right, you guys, thank you.
Thank
you.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
we look forward for the next movie and maybe to bring you again to
If
Lisbon.
you have another film and death conference, I'm all in.
Yeah.
You're speaking my language. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Did it work?
The sound is hard. But, yeah. So, how do you do it? Yeah, it's hard to work.
Every hole is a goal for them. But just one hole would be a goal for me.